That's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Can hear you loud and clear, Bill.
Oh, okay, thanks. I was testing on my side. I didn't know you could hear me.
Roberta or Gina, I understand Lisa's not going to be here, but as far as I know, Chris is, correct?
That's correct, Dan, as far as I know, yes.
Thank you.
Would anyone like me to text Grable?
I think Jennifer just did.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
But Board Member Watts, if you would like to also, you're welcome.
Okay.
I just got a call. He's a little delayed, so we may just want to get started.
Let's go ahead then. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll call the meeting of the Board of Public Utilities for the City of Santa Rosa to order. If we may have a roll call, please, Secretary Perez.
Yes. Chairman Galvin,
Here.
Vice Chair Arnone,
Here?
Board Member Badenford, Board Member Grable, Board Member Mullen,
Here.
Board Member Watts,
Here.
Board Member Wright.
Here.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Remind you to please mute your phones or microphones when you're not speaking, and please put away all cell phones and personal computers. Do we have any statements of abstention by board members? Hearing none, we have no study session. The minutes are being deferred to our next meeting. So we will move right into our staff briefing. Director Burke.
Thank you, Chair Galvin and members of the board. Our first staff briefing will be a recycle water update, and Deputy Director Regional Operations, Joe Schwal, will be presenting.
Thank you, Director Burke. Chair Galvin, members of the board, here's our bi-weekly recycled water storage update. I'll go right into it. If I can have the next slide, please. So our current storage is sitting at about 190 million gallons. As you can see, the last 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of August, I should say, the demand outstripped production by a fair amount, and supply dropped at a pretty rapid rate. But since then, several customers, about 15 of our customers have completed using their allotments and have been taken offline. And so I think you can see the last week or so, the line is stabilized, a little pretty flat line in about 190 million gallons. Irrigation, of course, continues from the rest of our customers. We're expecting about 14 more customers to be, about 14 or 15 more customers to finish their allotments this week or next. So it's, though we are below my projection that I gave you some time ago, and with that 55 million gallons that we had hoped to get from Sonoma Water not coming, we're still looking in a pretty good position, I think. And we will, it looks like, make it through the end of August and into September with the current schedule. On the next slide, I wanted to show kind of what this season looked like compared to previous average or previous highs and lows. So the blue lines, the upper blue line shows the maximum supply that we had for any given day of the year, and the bottom line shows the minimum supply we had for any given day of the year. And you can see this year's line, the red line, early in the season was above the maximum for a good month and a half, or a little more than a month and a half. And then starting in late March, we were below the minimum all the way through the middle of July. And in the middle of July, we kind of crept back into the bottom edge of our historical minimum. So we are kind of back on charted territory, even if not really as high of water supply as we would like. But this is 167 days that we were outside of our historical means or minimums or maximums during the year, which accounts for 45% of a full year. So it's been a pretty wild and uncharted year for us, and the end is of the water year is coming soon, and I think it's going to end up okay for all that. That's the end. That's all I have for my update. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any board member questions? Everybody seems to be shaking their head no. Thank you, Deputy Director. We'll open it up now for any public comments on item 5.1. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Anyone, Secretary Perez?
I'm seeing no hands.
Thank you. That'll take care of the staff briefing. Thank you again, Deputy Director Schwal. We have 2 items on the consent calendar.
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Motion by Vice Chair Arnone, seconded by Board Member Watts to approve items 6.1 and 6.2. We'll now take public comment. Any questions from the board on any of those? Okay. We'll now open up to public comments on item 6. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Secretary Perez, do we have anyone?
There are no raised hands.
Thank you. If you would do a roll call vote, please.
Apologies, I was on mute. Chairman Galvin.
Aye.
Vice Chair Arnone.
Aye.
Board Member Mullen.
Aye.
Board Member Watts.
Aye.
Board Member Wright.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. That'll take care of the consent calendar. We have 1 report item. Director Burke.
Thank you, Chair Galvin and members of the board. Our one and only report item is a resolution adopting an updated water billing policy related to billing adjustments, and Deputy Director of Administration Kimberly Zanino will be making the presentation.
Good afternoon, Chairman Galvin and members of the board. Today I am bringing you an update to the current adjustment policy used by the Water and Finance departments for your consideration. Next slide, please. As an overview, we will talk about the purpose of the adjustment policy, background on the policy, the changes that we are proposing, a couple of added adjustment procedures, and then the recommendation. Next slide, please. The purpose of the policy is really to provide our customers with assistance, to define processes, to use consistent methodology, and to provide clarity for not only our customers, but also for our staff. Next slide, please. For the background, the policy was last updated in November of 2011. The last update was made to make the policy consistent with the changes to the city code and the newly adopted tiered rate structure at that time. I won't go over all of the reasons an adjustment may be requested, but we'll provide some examples here for context. The policy provides processes for the following types of adjustments. First, property side leaks. When all criteria is met, such as water use returning to normal and documentation of a leak being fixed, the customer may receive an adjustment to the usage rate. We charge the customer the wholesale rate with the adjustment for the water that is attributed to the leak. We do not waive or remove charges, but reduce them so that we are still recovering the costs of purchasing that water from Sonoma Water. We also perform sewer cap reevaluations. An example for this adjustment would be if a customer had a property side leak during the sewer cap setting period, that increased water use would elevate the sewer cap and inflate the sewer usage charges inaccurately for the entire next fiscal year's billing. So we will adjust those upon request and with appropriate documentation. There's also unexplained usage. There are times when customers have a single month of high use. They cannot explain it. but water use then goes back down to a normal range, and we will allow occasional adjustments for this type of occurrence. And finally, inaccurate landscape measurements on dedicated irrigation meters. City staff determines the appropriate amount of water use that is required for the type of plants and the square footage of a planted area. This calculation determines the water that is charged in Tier 1 and in Tier 2, and we call this a water budget. If customers change their landscaping, they may request an adjustment to their water budget, and staff will work with them to determine the new water budget for the property, which would then redefine the volume of water they are charged in Tier 1 and Tier 2. Customers may not receive these adjustments every year, so there are also timelines identified in the policy as well. And the policy also allows the director authority for variances to the different adjustments that we allow. Next slide, please. These are some of the changes to the policy. In 2015, Santa Rosa Water changed to a 2-tier structure from a 4-tier water rate structure. After this change, the way the adjustments are calculated needed to be changed to match the new tiered structure. And those adjustments were made with the approval of, the director of Santa Rosa Water with a memo to the finance department. The change to the policy will reflect the appropriate tiers now. In addition, to add more clarity for staff and for our customers, you may have noticed the policy became significantly longer. This is due to the addition of definitions, methodology for adjustments, and defining criteria for each type of adjustment. This is really just to be sure the process can be consistently applied by staff and clearly defined for our customers. We also added a couple of adjustments to the policy, which are currently performed but not documented, and I will go over those on the next slide. Next slide, please. One addition for adjustments requested is a section on specialty meters. I'm just going to go through what a couple of the specialty meters do so you can understand that the adjustments would be performed on these various types of billings. So Santa Rosa Water has various types of meters that define the billing parameters for these accounts, and they may need adjustments to those billings. And I'll explain a couple of those here just for example. One example is a cooling tower meter. These meters allow us to bill for filling a cooling tower. This assures we do not charge sewer usage on water that fills a tower and is not discharged to the sewer usage or the sewer system. There's also a bleed meter associated with these cooling towers, and that measures the water that is actually discharged into the sewer system that we do need to charge sewer for. Another type of specialty meter would be meter that measures product water. As an example, water that is used to make tortillas or bread is measured so customers do not pay sewer charges on water that is going directly into their product and not being discharged to the system. This section allows customers a defined process for requesting an adjustment for issues in these much more complicated systems. In addition to specialty meters, we also have requests to adjust the sewer rate category for commercial customers. Commercial customers' sewer usage charges can vary based on the constituents and strength of their discharge, and they may request to work with staff to move to a different category. These processes are monitored and evaluated by environmental services. And while these adjustments have been performed on these types of billings, we felt it important to document the processes, the criterias and methodologies for the same reason as the other adjustments, which is for clarity and consistency. Next slide, please. Therefore, it is recommended by Santa Rosa Water and the Finance Department that the Board of Public Utilities, by resolution, replace Water Billing Policy UB1 billing adjustments with the new Water Billing Policy UB2 billing adjustments to conform to the current water rate structure and add defined procedures for the additional billings performed by Santa Rosa Water and the Finance Department. That concludes my presentation, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Deputy Director Zanino. Any board member questions or comments? Board Member Mullen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. couple of questions, and I apologize in advance if this has already been covered previously with the board, but I'll ask them nonetheless. With the new provisions we provided in updating the policy, do we have a category like, for instance, special consideration? And by that I mean emergency situations. Where today is probably good timing. We have another wildfire situation that's working its way around the county. If someone, for instance, lives up against a lot of open space or an area that gets caught up in one of these wind-driven fires, and it comes up to their back fence. And so one of the things they attempt to do is they turn on the water and they start watering down their outbuildings or their roof with the hope that the embers that are floating around aren't going to land there and start a fire. So they let the water run all day long in an effort to try to beat that down. Or there's a flooding situation where some of their piping on their property, because they own a couple of acres, but they're in the city limits, wash out, and there's a leak unbeknownst to them because there's a flooding going on and there's a lot of water that goes on. So do we have a category for special situations or emergency type of situations that people can apply for some relief under that situation?
So in the second one that you were talking about, that would clearly qualify for the leak adjustment. So the property side leak adjustment. If that got repaired and we saw the water usage return to normal, we would definitely do a leak adjustment for them in that situation. As far as the emergency goes in the fire situation that you explained, typically we'd handle those under the emergency itself. And so different things would happen. Stuff like with the delinquent fees that now we're doing, there was a memo that was created that was signed by the city manager and brought to the BPU. So we would likely use a different mechanism instead of having it actually listed in the policy for allowing for any adjustments on billings that happen during an emergency situation.
Okay. Okay, then I'll move on with that and comment later, perhaps. The other one is, do we have a form currently for when people call the building department and ask for an adjustment for a variety of different reasons? Do we start out by sending them the form that says, here's the process, and kind of a check the box things will guide you through the process so that when we get it in the department, we know how to, they've already sort of checked the box and kind of pointed us in the direction that they're proceeding. So it's sort of a check the box, here's where you go. Do we have a form like that we give to customers that are requesting adjustments?
We do. Water billing sends out a basically kind of checklist that tells them all of the things that they need to provide for us in order to receive the adjustment. We do not have that kind of checklist for the more complicated processes. They'll actually get a hold of environmental services usually and then request, and then they'll have to go through and really kind of investigate and define what happened before that they determine what exactly needs to be submitted for them. But for the standard adjustments, yes, there is a letter that goes out and a form that helps our customers through the entire process. It's also written on the website somewhere.
Okay, thank you.
Other board member questions? Seeing none, we have a resolution.
I'll move to,
Sorry, did we want to take public comment on this item before we move the resolution?
okay.
I think we're supposed to have the motion before we have the public comment.
Okay.
Okay, I move that we change the water billing policy from UB1 to UB2.
I'll second.
Motion by board member Wright, seconded by board member Watts. Now we'll open it up for public comments on item 7.1. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Secretary Perez, anyone?
There are no hands raised.
All right, if we may have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Chair, may we have some discussion?
You may.
Thank you. Back to the point I was raising about special provisions on emergencies is I understood the staff's response. However, I'd like to urge us to at least include a sentence in this new policy that steers them that way, because you know, we've all seen and heard from people that have gone through these types of situations in recent years here and how they struggle for any kind of relief. And so anything we can do to make it clear for them where they go when they need help, and in this case, you know, some relief on their water bill because of a condition related to the emergency, I think it would be helpful for us to steer them towards that help instead of being silent on this part, and then they have to start hunting around as to where do I go for the relief. So I guess ask if we can amend the motion to include some provision like that.
I'm fine with that. Board Member Wright and Board Member Watts, you were the first and the second on the motion.
I would just want to hear from staff that if that's even a possibility, or if this is a, you know, policy that needs to get worked on right away, and so forth, and maybe Attorney McLean as well.
So I think that we certainly could add a sentence, maybe in the area that then gives them also some latitude on variances to the director. Also include a sentence, something along the lines that says, you know, in the event of emergency situations, adjustments will be considered, you know, based on the emergency on a you know, area-wide or city-wide basis. So for example, during the 2017 fires, there was a lot of extra water use and water loss that happened. And I think there was a more global approach that addressed that. So I think we could, as long as the board, so we have a couple of options. We could either bring it back with that language for adoption on consent so that the board has the opportunity to view that specific addition, or we can move forward with that with direction to staff to add a sentence along those lines and then delegate the authority to the director to finalize the language, and then we could just send it as an information item to the BPU. So I think that either of those options would be fine.
Board Member Mullen, do you have a preference?
I would defer to staff. I think they understand what I'm proposing here, and I would defer to them to fold it into the policy. And I'm not trying to make this more complicated than it already is. I'm actually trying to provide some clarity. And so I would defer, rather than have to go back and redo it and bring it back. I would just defer or provide direction to staff to provide something in that area that they understand how it would fold into their existing policy and the new direction that we're proposing, and just move on.
So we do have a written resolution in the directory. So I just want to maybe note that the resolution would need to be specifically amended to address that. Director Burke, did you have any comments or contribution on this issue before?
I was just going to mention, I think we understand the request and direction from the board member, and to give a little bit of context, so we can definitely add some language related to that. I will say with big events that we've had in the past, it typically, and how we address this in the 2017 fires, is that we actually brought this back to the board as a whole because it applied citywide. So I think that we could have some language, but I think when they're big disaster events, we'd likely be bringing something back to the board as a whole, because it's usually not that simple. And also we typically have, you know, we still have to pay for the water from the water agency. And so they're challenging, and we're learning new, and it continues to adjust. So I think we can add some language to provide a little bit of direction, but would also suggest that when it's big events, we'd likely be bringing this back to the board as a whole to address the whole city at that time, if that makes sense. So
yes,
in terms of,
Yeah, I just tried to, I looked at the policy UB2 just now, looking for something along the line, and I didn't find it. I was looking for something along the lines of there are certain, there may be exceptions to this policy, you know, given unknown circumstances, and not having the chance to go through it in detail. I was wondering if perhaps whoever drafted this might be able to point me to something that gave a little bit of wiggle room. Because usually that, I mean, you often find that in policies like this. So,
well, if I may, a couple of one response to that is when there are council or board adopted policies, those are not codified in city code or the ordinances. So therefore, we have the opportunity then to come back to the board or the council under certain circumstances and ask for a waiver from the policy if it seems like, you know, there's some circumstance or event that doesn't quite fit and that isn't addressed because it was unanticipated, for example. And then also there's some unique, there is some language, I think Deputy Director Zanino pointed out that there was variance language in there that gave the director some latitude on slight variances. So those would be for smaller, unique items, I think. And then we would be able to, if there was a consensus today, to modify the resolution to authorize, delegate some authority to the director to add language, just indicating that in the event of a regional or citywide emergency, that the policy may not, that there might be some other action rather than the policy would be applicable, and that they would, you know, look to not necessarily the policy, but some other larger action that could be taken with respect to all of the area affected.
You know, looking at the variance language that you just mentioned, if you look at section 5.1C, what it says is one of the circumstances in which a variance can be given is that granting a sewer cap reevaluation for a circumstance other than a property side leak, an unexplained excessive water use, or theft. So that seems like a pretty wide open authorization for anything that's not already accounted for to be the subject of a variance request. So, and then I also note that section 6 deals with appeals too. So there are mechanisms in the language as provided that would allow for consideration of some extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah.
I don't know if that meets the concerns that Board Member Mullen was addressing, but I mean, I just wanted to point that out.
Board Member Wise.
Sorry. I'll get back to you. Thank you.
I think that if we can just maybe then get a specific sentence in the resolution to make it clear, to reflect what Board Member Mullen is requesting. And it seems like there wouldn't need to be any rewritten parts of the policy if it already has that language in there.
Thank you. Board Member Mullen.
Thank you. What I was trying to do was actually try to make it a little clearer. And again, I agree with Vice Chair Arnone's point about the wiggle room where anything not identified in the policy would be dealt with on a case-by-case basis through the variance process or some language like that. But just something that says, such as wildfire impacts or, you know, which is a known incident that we've dealt with, will be dealt with on a case-by-case basis by the director or by whatever body is gonna hear that. So something in just simple that just says whatever's not covered in here will be covered on a case-by-case basis using the variance process or whatever we want to do with that. Just something as simple as that. And again, everybody now that has been here in the last few years understands wildfires and they understand what impacts it represents. So that's the only reason I'm calling this forward. And we're sitting here today and our hillsides are burning up again. So I'm just raising it as something that I think it's important to identify. Thank you.
Director Burke.
So Chair Galvin and members of the board, can I suggest, and I'll leave this up to our Assistant City Attorney to say if this is the right vehicle, But if we add to the resolution language that says, now therefore be it further resolved that the Board of Public Utilities directs the water director to add language to the various section to deal with natural disasters.
Sounds like a good amendment. Does that?
I would have no changes to that.
All right, so Board Member Wright and Board Member Watts, are you okay with the amendment to the motions that you made and seconded?
Yes.
Yes, I'm fine with that. So I guess we'll say modify UB1 to UB2 with language provided by the director. Perfect.
Any other board member questions or comments? If not, we'll open it up for public comment on item 7.1. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Secretary Perez, anyone?
I do not have any raised hands.
All right, if we may do a roll call vote, please.
Certainly. Chairman Galvin,
Aye.
Vice Chair Anoni,
Aye.
Board Member Mullen,
Aye.
Board Member Watts,
Aye.
Board Member Wright.
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. That takes care of item 7.1. We'll now move to item 8, which is public comments. Now taking public comments on non-agenda matters. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you are dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Secretary Perez?
There are no raised hands.
Thank you. I'll take care of item 8. We have no referrals. We have one written communication that was sent to you, the letter that was sent by the director to the Farm Bureau. You can open that up if anybody has any questions or comments on that. Vice Chair Arnone?
I just want to compliment the director on the letter. I thought it stated well and reflected well the efforts that have been made to communicate with the ag community, and I appreciate her detailed explanation of the history and the information that she provided. So I thought it was well done.
I would concur with those comments, and I'm a little surprised that we haven't received a response from the Farm Bureau apparently, but at least we've cleared the record, so that's good. Any other board member questions or comments? Seeing none, I will now open it up for public comments on item 10.1. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you are dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Secretary Perez?
I have no raised hands.
Thank you. That'll take care then of our written communications. On the subcommittee reports, I'll report that the contract review subcommittee met on August 13th. We reviewed 2 contracts. The first contract was a professional services agreement with Data Instincts that you just took care of at this meeting. The second item is a project work order with Green Valley Consulting Engineers for construction management and inspection for the North Trunk sewer replacement. The contract review subcommittee recommended approval, and that project work order will come to us at our next meeting in September, I believe. Any questions or any other subcommittee reports? All right, we will open it up for public comments on item number 11. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you are dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Secretary Perez?
No raised hands.
Thank you. That'll take care of item number 11. Item 12 on the agenda is board member reports. Do we have any board member reports? Yes, Board Member Watts.
I think most of you know that I am pregnant and expecting my first kid. She's due in about 4.5 weeks now. So I just wanted to let the board know that although we are virtual and I hope to be able to participate as actively as I can, I cannot make any agreements at this point. I've never had a child, so I know there will be some adjustments that will need to be made. So I just want to thank you for your patience in advance and let you know I will communicate as much as I can with Chair Galvin and Secretary Perez to let you know about timing and everything. But I am officially due September 19th, so I will keep you posted.
Sounds good.
See pictures too, photographs.
Yeah. And she'll be participating in your first Zoom meeting after the birth.
Yeah.
Well, I hope everything goes nice and smoothly.
Thank you.
Any other board member reports? Okay, we'll open it up for public comments on Board Member Watts's report. We're now taking public comments on item 12. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. They should all be coming in to congratulate you.
Unfortunately, I have no public comment.
That's okay. All right, that will conclude item number 12. We'll now move to item 13, which is the director's report. Director Burke.
Well, thank you, Chair Galvin and members of the board, and congratulations, Board Member Watts. That's very exciting. I do have a couple items that I wanted to report out to the board. At the last board meeting, we provided an update on our water use efficiency programs, our Water Smart campaign, and had let the board know that our Mayor Schwedhelm, had agreed to participate in the Wyland Foundation National Mayor's Challenge for Water Conservation. Good news, I am happy to report that as of today, the nationwide standings show that we are in first place. I'm actually quite shocked, but we are in first place, which is great for cities with a population of 100,000 to 300,000 people. So water staff is continuing to work with our city communications team to provide targeted outreach through our City Connections newsletters, social media, and other outlets to continue to remind Santa Rosans to take the pledge to conserve water and make common sense changes in their daily habits. So the competition does run through the month of August. So for 11 more days, hopefully we'll continue to have folks participating and see if we can actually come in first place. So thank you, board and council, for your support in our participation in this challenge.
And if you haven't gone in yet and done the pledge, it's very easy. It only takes a couple minutes, and I would encourage you to do so.
Yes, you can go to mywaterpledge.org and participate. I wanted to also let the board know this has been a very challenging week operationally. We started out the week with calls for energy conservation. And so water staff has done a great job supporting these efforts. We reduced our electrical usage between 3 and 10 p.m. as requested. We reprogrammed our pump controls to top off our reservoirs prior to 3, and then allowing our reservoirs to drain, and then picked pumping back up after 10 p.m. The Laguna Wastewater Treatment Plant is also diverting 30% of their flow during those hours to on-site storage. So then we can treat that water later after the high demand time. And we have continued messaging water conservation tips to our customers to help reduce demand on the energy grid. And that quickly led to, as everyone knows, and as Board Member Mullen alluded to, the wildfires that are in this area. So we have also been responding. The Water Department is getting prepared and is well prepared for responding to any impacts that we would have. In particular, we have been communicating closely with the Sonoma County Water Agency, as we are aware that the fire in the western part of Sonoma County could threaten Sonoma County Water Agency's facilities along the Russian River, which is our source of water supply. I want to make it clear to everyone listening, currently there are no impacts to Sonoma Water's facilities, their water supply, or water quality, because I have heard some feedback that there's been some confusion out there about that. So I just want to reinforce that. However, we do know that the more water we can store for essential needs and potential firefighting purposes, the better prepared we will be. Sonoma Water's Emergency Operations Center has been fully activated and they are in direct contact with Incident Command. And we are coordinating closely and checking in daily with Sonoma Water. We are asking our customers to immediately conserve water indoors and outdoors. Sonoma Water has pushed out some regional messaging, and Santa Rosa Water has supplemented that messaging to our customers. We have also begun calling, and I believe we've completed calling all of our biggest irrigation users, asking them to suspend irrigation at this time. And in terms of operations, we are continuing to closely monitor our water storage. We're ensuring that our generators are fully fueled and we are running our Farmers Lane wells. The good news is that the messaging does appear to be working. So we're very thankful to our community as well as the community of the other water contractors. Demand has slowed enough that Sonoma Water has been able to, in essence, fully fill their storage. So they have over 110 million gallons in storage. And they have seen a drop in demand, so much so that they've actually had to reduce their pumping because they have no place for the water to go. So we're really grateful to our community. We will continue to send out messaging and asking our customers to conserve and coordinating closely with Sonoma Water. Also wanted to let the board know that we had our MPDS permit hearing earlier today. A big thank you to Chair Galvin and Deputy Director Sean McNeil for speaking at the Regional Board permit hearing. Although the Regional Board had made some changes based on the comment letter we had submitted, we still had significant concerns with the no net load for phosphorus, the water quality trading framework, and alternative compliance options for complying with the no net load requirement, as well as the dissolved oxygen receiving water limit. Both Chair Galvin and Deputy Director McNeil spoke to these concerns at today's hearing. Unfortunately, the Regional Board adopted the permit with these requirements intact without making any changes based on our testimony at today's hearing. We will be bringing additional information to the board regarding next steps at our next board meeting. And then last, I wanted to let folks know that we are going to be making a change to our recording secretary for the board. We will officially be changing to have Roberta Atha taking over the board secretary position at the September 17th meeting. Roberta has been training with Secretary Perez for quite some time, and she's currently the backup recording secretary. So she will be contacting all of the board members to introduce herself via email and make sure that you have her contact information, as she will be your new liaison starting with the September 17th meeting. And I did want to just say a huge thank you to Gina Perez. She has been faithfully serving the board as the recording secretary for 17 years. She does a fantastic and phenomenal job, and she will be greatly missed in this role. But I am excited that it does free her up to take on some new challenges and new opportunities with the department. So that is great news. I really can't say enough about how much I have appreciated her professionalism and commitment that she has provided throughout her time serving the board. And just a really big thank you to Gina. That is my report, and happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Director Burke. Any questions or comments from the board? Vice Chair Arnone?
My only comment is that I need to know who else to put on my speed dial. If Gina's not there, who am I going to call? I mean, as recently as today, I called her. So I need a new speed dial number, Roberta.
I'm there for you, Mr. Arnone.
I think we all do. Any other board member comments or questions? All right, well, we'll open it up for public comments on item 13. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Secretary Perez?
I am not seeing any hands for this item.
All right, that will conclude item number 13. Again, everybody be safe and healthy, and we'll adjourn the meeting and see you in a couple weeks.